of Finance / Committee of the Whole to order at 6:04 p.m. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Here.
Here. Here.
Here.
The next item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on the items on the agenda tonight? We are still discussing our 2021, 2022 fiscal year budget proposal. Those are items on the agenda. On the agenda, Zoning Board of Appeals, Public Pension, Library Board, Library Fund, sorry, Police and Fire, Police Department, ESDA, Fire Department, Ambulance Paramedic Fund. So anyone from the public who would like to speak on these items? If not, can everybody rise for the pledge? We didn't do that last time. So as we stated tonight, we have the items on the agenda. We would like to, sorry, for the record, we have Alderman Navarrete joining the meeting. We also have our police chief in the audience, and we have our fire chief, and we have our spokesman, Sean Howard, in the audience as well.
And your library director.
We have the library executive, Jen, and we also have Director Finance, John Kasparic, City Treasurer, City Clerk. And now we will turn it over to our Finance Director / Consultant, John Kasparic, to lead us tonight. So John, you're on.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. All right, we're going to start off with the Zoning Board of Appeals, which will appear on page 23. Okay, there's only 2 line items in the zoning board, and they were both left the same. The budget being 6,200, remaining at 6,200. They spent 1,600 last year, but we also understand that because of COVID, there were very few zoning meetings because of the construction. So I doubt if there's any questions. Does anybody have any questions related to the zoning board? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Just give me a minute. Okay, the next one. These are our 2 littlest ones, so we're getting them out of the way right away. Police Pension Board, 1 line item. This is where the city pays the civilian appointees that attend meetings on the Police Pension Board. Budgeted 900, they actually spent 900. That's more coincidental than fact, because they're not guaranteed any dollar amounts unless they actually have meetings. So budget will remain the same unless anybody has any comments. Okay, let me get my notes. Library. Library will start on page 26.
So for the record, we have our library director here. This is her first time being before the council to answer questions. So I'd just like to prepare you. These aldermen like grilling people, so if you want to, they're going to be nice a little. But we will, go ahead, John.
It's like giving information, so that's okay.
Go ahead, John.
All right. We're going to start off with the revenues. Not anticipating a property tax increase for the library, so therefore we will continue to budget the 1.5 million, which is the amount that's extended on the levy. As you can see, the amount collected is less. That's due to the fact that we do not collect 100% of our taxes levied. As far as the revenue is concerned, some of them have been consolidated down or eliminated. So you can see these are the miscellaneous revenues that the library collects throughout the year. In meeting with the executive director, she wanted to eliminate some of the accounts that are not being used anymore, so there's no estimated revenues set up for accounts that were used in the past. And so the estimated revenues last year were only $4,200, but they're set at $13,900 for this budget. These are the miscellaneous revenues, and the prior budget was $33,900. There's other revenues for the library as well that have to do with employee health insurance and in-house material sales. And then we get down to the grants. We have the typical state grant. We also have the E-rate grant. Those are typical each year. And then, per discussions with the mayor, there is a Google Coding Program grant that the state of will be awarded to us from the state of Illinois, and it will be used in the library. So we set up a $500,000 for the grant. There's a corresponding expense in the capital items for the same amount. So if the grant money doesn't come in, we won't be spending it. But if we do get the grant money, when we get to the next page, you'll see where we also set up the expenditure. So overall, the expenditure revenues this year, because of the grant, they're going up from 1.6 million estimated last year to 2,091,000. And then moving forward is the library expenses. And as you go through, you'll see that there was some consolidation of accounts. The personal services was slightly increased from 1,206,000 to 1,310,000. Then we go on down to other services and charges. They have a slight increase from 506,000 to 526,000. I would venture to point out that the library does run under the budget. So as you look at salaries as well as other services and charges from the last fiscal year, they were below the estimated. And then we get to supplies. Supplies did come down on a budget of 381,000 to 289,000. Again, the actuals were less than the budget. And then finally, we get into capital items that the library feels that they may have to incur this year. So in addition to furniture and purchases, which they left at 35,000, there was also capital improvements. There were none done last year, which they talked about doing, and now there's more. So they've got $130,000 of capital improvements, various projects to do at the library. And then we have the corresponding state expenditure grant, as well as the E-rate grant expense, and there is the Google Coding Program expense for the $500,000. Overall expenditures for the library budgeted this year are approximately $500,000 more than last year. Last year's budget was $2,319,000. This year, $2,851,000. And I will tell you that the library does have reserves so that they would not need to borrow if they did get to those higher spending limits. However, in my many years, the library's never come close to spending near what they have in their budget. So even though we do show a negative, as you can see, looking at the way the library's operated over the prior years, they ran negatives in negative numbers in 18 and 19, surpluses in 20, and then again another negative in 21, but they do have reserves to cover this, at least for another 5 years based on my estimate. Any questions related to the library?
I just want to recognize Jen, and we had a conversation about, further using the library in the community and the number of visitors in the library and how that system works. But also we're kind of counting on the library to make sure that you guys do more with school districts and also make sure you guys do more in the community. So if anyone has any questions of the director, she's here to answer questions. And also any programs that you would like to ask her about, she's here now.
I have one question. As far as, I see this Google grant and also see the award of where it's going. What are your planned intended uses for that grant?
The main thing that I will say I haven't seen 100% of the details of that grant as of yet. agenda to start working with. However, the library is in need of a revamp for our technology. We're very aware of that, and we have the staff prepared to make those suggestions and to deal those purchases with fiscal stewardship in mind. So we are looking forward to figuring out how to not only bring technology into the library that's very helpful, but also we're looking to find ways to circulate technology out of the library to make it more accessible to our patrons in their homes, because we recognize not everybody has the ability to come into the building all the time. But if you have an active library card, we'll figure out a way to get what you need to do.
For this line item that says videotapes, would that be, I know that's kind of antiquated. I would assume nobody's still renting videotapes, VHS, but does that apply to DVDs as well?
We're going to be doing some interesting combinations.
Okay.
We are looking at, and it's something that's changed in libraries over probably the last 10 years. So many of our services now have become console video games and not VHS, but DVDs and Blu-rays are actually very high circulating items in the library.
Okay.
So working on getting those developed, there's something that I think is CD-ROM databases. But we're working on getting all of those things clarified to make them more transparent, exactly for what you're asking. So no, we don't have DVDs, or I mean, we don't have VHS, but we definitely have a wide circulating collection of other media materials.
Thank you.
Alderman, one other comment. When I met with the executive director, she was talking about changing some of the titles. We just hadn't had a chance. We aren't going to change dollar amounts, but maybe some of the titles may change. But when they do, you will see that. So you may see a line item where you might not see CD-ROM anymore or something like that, but the new title. I just want to let you know, and I will let you know those new titles once we finalize them, because I told the executive director to knock her socks off, change any one of them that she wants, and she took me too literal, so I think there'll be a number of changes. Just in titles, not dollars.
And what other grant programs are you gonna? You guys have a grant writer at the library?
We do not have a grant writer on staff. One of the IT managers, Zachary Warren, has done a great job over the past few years being the main grant content creator for us for applications. So I'm trying to take some of that on so he can focus more on these outside projects. We have already received for this year our per capita grant, which the amount is reflected, which is wonderful. It went up across the entire state. So we're very excited to use that for our outreach and public communications this year. We will also be working on over 2 more grants today through the Secretary of State. There's one called On the Road to Recovery
Yeah.
that will be due on August 15th. And then there was another one that I cannot remember the title of off the top of my head, but it is also due August 15th.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? The Alderman have any other questions?
I have a question. This is more curiosity. I see that we're spending significantly more, or we're budgeting significantly more for youth service books. Is there any specific program associated with this increase that you can talk about?
Yes, so one of the things that we are actually going to be doing, and this is something that the library's current management team brought to my attention, was that they would like to put together some blank items as far as books in general. So that's not only physical items for youth services, that'll be one that's retitled, but it's all of the books and then all of our ebook and audiobook, e-graphic novel content as well. So that's why you'll see in a few other line items that they've gone to zero, is because we're putting that fund together to maximize the purchasing power across the board.
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, John.
Okay, all the questions, we will move on. Police and Fire Commission.
Which page is?
Police and Fire Commission is on page 20. Police and Fire Commission is on page 23. Okay. All right, so moving on with the Police and Fire Commission, there was the proposed increase for the Secretary of the Police and Fire Commission Board. Outside of that, there were increases on line items. Now, we did not meet with the commission, for obvious reasons. However, we do know that both police and fire need testing done this year, so we anticipate this will be a heavier year in expenses for the Police and Fire Commission because of all of the additional testing. Also, advertising was increased as well, so the legal advertising to go out there to get the candidates. Other than that, nothing else really. Other than that, that's it. So the budget's going from $103,489 last year to $150,000 this year. Any questions?
One quick question, Martin, of the meeting expense in red, was there a change there, or is it pretty much the same?
I apologize, I should have brought that one up. Yes, the meeting reimbursement for the commissioners will be is being requested to be raised to $500 per meeting, if they attend. The line item itself has not had an increase seriously in probably over a decade. And when we're reviewing it with the mayor felt that there's a lot of work that goes into the Police and Fire Commission, and we know both departments are in grave need of getting additional officers, so they're going to be very busy this upcoming year. Any other questions related to the Police and Fire Commission? Okay. We will then move to the Police Department. Police Department starts on page 15. So Alderman, when you look on page 15 to start with, if you look at staffing numbers, if you see the ones in red, that is currently how many staff we had, at least at the time when I put this together a week ago. So if there's been anybody else that's resigned, I don't know about. So as you can see, patrolmen, we currently have 44 on staff. The budget is being set for 54 patrolmen, so obviously we need to hire 10 new patrolmen, hopefully during the course of the year. We're down 2 records clerks. That number remained the same as 6. It's just that with the ERIs and so that took place, we're down 2 records clerks. The mayor is recommending that we use a communication supervisor again like we have in the past. So as you can see, we have had a communication supervisor. Currently, there is nobody in that role. All other positions remain the same and are fully staffed. Amazingly, even our communication clerks, we have 15 right now. May not, which is good because it's seldom we ever have a full contingent. So the salaries are reflected for everyone. There's a new item called Operations Supervisor. That's a new line item, budgeted for $58,000. There's nobody currently in the position. Part-time employees, this is something that the mayor's been working with the PD. Setting it, this is another new line item. There's nobody in, nobody's been hired yet. The proposed budget for that is $90,000. But as you go through, with the overtime was still put at the same. Last year we actually expended $920,000. The budget was $630,000. So overall, the budget last year was $9,366,000. This year, it's $8,838,000. And part of the reason why that budget is down is simply because we're down 10 patrolmen. And so I did not budget 10 more full-time patrolmen because obviously they're not on the payroll yet. So we took less than half the salary for 10 is what I put in the budget, because right now we don't even have a list. So the likelihood that we'll have police officers working in November, December is iffy at best. So that's the only reason. That number will go up next year. If we have the full contingent of officers, we'll be back up to about the 4.5 million once they're fully hired.
Yep.
So the reason why the budget is down this year is simply because we won't incur that much in the salaries for patrolmen because we're down, as I indicated. Any questions on personal services?
Before you go, let me just have the chief, I know the chief wanted to make some comments, but I just want to thank the alderman for wanting to help and add more police officers, and Alderman Tillman and Ordinance and Resolutions for addressing the lateral transfer issue. I have been speaking with the chief and had some conversations with the union about using part-time officers to make sure we beef up our community, we beef up patrols. You've seen the increase patrols in our area. You've seen the chief respond. So I believe we're on the right track, but I'll let the chief talk about issues and what he sees as well.
Yeah, and I appreciate the support that you guys all give us. And part of the new hiring process between part-time employees, lateral employees, and those from the eligibility list are really going to be able to beef up our community engagement as well as provide for more visibility on the streets. Be able to do a lot more interaction with the public and address additional issues. It's really going to help us, add that additional presence out there. So I appreciate it.
I got a question. The operations supervisor, what exactly is the operations supervisor?
Just put that in to provide a strategic plan for not only police department, but citywide operations. We still need to have, since we don't have an ESDA director, we have to, by law, complete our emergency service plan. That hasn't been done since 2019. We also have to complete a couple other emergency plans that have to be done. So that will be housed out of the police department.
And that's what the operations supervisor's
Yes.
responsibilities are? Okay.
Yeah, because it's not my intention to, unless the council wants to, it's not my intention to fill the ESDA position director now. Even though we have that in the budget, but we're going to rely on our police department for a lot of items. I've asked the police chief to present a plan to the city council that includes a summer plan for next year, winter plan for this year. How do we expand more block club participation in our city, and how do we get more community engagement? So the chief is.
Yeah, I'm about 3 pages into it so far. So anyways, the other thing too, like with the part-time officers, is going to be a great benefit to the city. We're limited by contractual language as far as how many and what those officers can do. But there can be a visible presence here at City Hall. There can be more of a presence in the River Oak Shopping District, adding foot patrols and day foot patrols by using the part-time officers. And the lateral officers and those coming off the eligibility list are going to help out tremendously too, because we can then beef up some of the rank like Ryan numbers that we have. We can, the newer officers with no experience in Calumet City will take on that patrol function and pull some experienced patrol officers and put those in those proactive policing groups that we have. So I'm excited. I really am.
Chief, can you address, are you satisfied with the patrolmen and where we are with, so are you looking at the number that's in red, or are you looking at the number in black?
I don't have red in mind. I see a number on the left and a number on the right.
That's John's magic. So the number on the left is 54 in your book?
Yes.
Number in red in our book is 44.
Okay.
So did you have any concern?
The number 44 is in red?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, the 54 is much better, much more workable number, which will allow for us to do something that's
Okay.
Mayor, again, I put the 44 so everybody understands how many patrolmen are currently on the payroll for the city. That was just informational. The goal is to get to 54.
Yes.
You'll see a similar scenario when we go through the fire department as well.
And that's a lot of what the mayor and I had spoke about, really beefing up that number, and with the full-time and part-time, get our numbers up there, and we'll be able to have that presence that we want out there.
And did I understand you correctly? The operations supervisor is sort of taking the role or some of the tasks of the ESDA director?
Yes.
What other task above and beyond is this role?
You know, I have the job description and I can send it to the Alderman later tonight that you can look at. It's more task in there than just writing the ESDA preparedness plan. So I think it's like 20 or 30 other tasks in conjunction with the police department. But I'll make sure I send it after the meeting.
Okay. That's all.
This role falls under the direction of the chief, correct?
Yes.
Any other questions related to personal services? If not,
Chief, I'm sorry, Chief, are we
Tell
at liberty to say how many part-time? Or you want to share that with the Alderman per contract?
Yeah, we can have, up to, currently right now, the way we stand right now, we can have up to six part-time officers. But, the more full-time that we hire, that number will go up. So right now, it's six.
The dispatchers, are they not in this section or what? Dispatchers?
Communication clerks.
51179.
Oh, okay. Got it. What are we currently, this is what we have currently?
We actually do have 15
Is that the number we're
in
supposed to be at?
dispatch.
Is that the number that we're supposed to be at?
There were budgeted for that,
15 is what the budget has been for the past several years, and we actually have 15 actually on the payroll. What I say, oftentimes, while we budget 15, we rarely hit 15.
Where
because
are we at?
of turnover.
They're at 15, and then the supervisor and the director, I think they're 17 right now. We just recently, within the last couple of days, had one that resigned. But 15, I think, is the number that they've always, 17 is the number they've always reached, with 15 being the communications.
Right, and then a communications supervisor is another body.
Okay.
I have a question, just a point of information for myself. Your records clerks, do they process tickets?
Yes,
And we need to get them up to 6. We have 4.
yes. There were some retirements that happened. Obviously, there was early retirements and some things that kind of messed things up, but they were at 6. Last year, they've been down to 4. Haven't been able to complete all of the work during the regular 8 hours. They've had to stay overtime. But it'll kind of reduce that.
And just for the Alderman, I've asked John to give us a list of all the open positions, you know, by department that we'll give to the Alderman. As soon as John gets us that list.
It's on my notes here.
Just so you can see department by department, what's open, what number we are at, and what number we have to get to. Okay. Chief, do you have anything else?
No.
Go ahead, John.
Flipping over to the second page, we then will go over the other services and charges. The budget last year was set at $421,000. This year, the budget was increased to $542,000. Part of the increase, you'll see the new line item called IT contractual. The police department has a substantial amount of IT needs, and so in discussions with the mayor, there is a definite need that we have more IT presence, whether it be outside contractual or vendors, but because most of the police officers that were doing the IT are now on the streets, so to speak, and therefore we need to, it is a definite need that the department has. So the budget was set at $100,000, doesn't mean they'll spend $100,000. The other large line item increased $25,000 was in the maintenance, and I think you indicated, Chief, the air conditioning's a problem, and that was the big cost increase from going from $150,000 to $175,000. Those two line items make up just about the entire change of other services and charges, all the rest of the budget remain fairly the same.
And it's also my plan to start beefing up the grant writing department, to make sure that the chief, we did a good job with going after the COPS grant this year, didn't do it last year.
Yes, we got it, well, it's still in the application process right now.
Yeah. So next year, we'll be looking at more grants for the department and actually sending the chief to DC to beg and request money from our federal officials as well. But we want to make sure we beef up that department to counteract the funding in the department.
Moving on then to supplies, the budget remained the same, $65,000 last year, $65,000 this year for the line items. The actual expenditures last year were $59,000. So there really is no major changes there, unless somebody has a question. Vehicle expense, $109,000 budget last year. This year was set at $96,000, so it's a slight decrease. The decrease coming in supplies for maintenance. Appears that that line item is slowly going down, so the police chief felt we lowered from $50,000 to $30,000. That is the major change in this line item. There was a slight, we did up the traffic accident repairs, but keep in perspective, that's a guess, because we don't know how many traffic accident repairs we're going to have for our vehicles. But looking at some history here and looking at last year being at $31,000, where the chief decreased supplies for maintenance, he did increase by 10,000 traffic accident repairs. And again, that line item's only used if there's actually an accident. So if we have a good year, that line item could be zero.
One of the things I was going to add to the budget, but I talked to a school district, was crossing guards. I didn't know the council's appetite for that. We can come back to that at a later date, but I didn't speak to all school districts, but spoke to 2 of them. And we kind of felt it should be a function of the school districts. So if the council at some point want to talk about crossing guards, then we also got to talk about, liability of the city and bringing those crossing guards back. So if that's something the council want to talk about, we can put it on the future agenda, or we can discuss it.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Mayor, a quick question. Would those employees, those particular positions be bargained? Would they be under the bargain agreement? Or?
I don't think they were no, they weren't last time.
Yeah. They won't. Okay.
So if we hire the crossing guards, they will be the city, but we just have to take on the liability.
Okay.
So I did insert $100,000 for crossing guards, took it out just to have a conversation. And I would just encourage the aldermen to please have conversations here regarding the budget. And if you're discussing any employees, we got to go in executive session, but please have the conversations here. So if you want to have a conversation about the crossing guards, this is the time, this is the place, and we can put it on a future agenda or go through it now. And Chief, I don't think you've weighed in on how the crossing guards will add to or subtract to what we do community-wise.
Well, we had the crossing guards, I want to say, went away. It's been some years now. And I think the school's been doing, I think the city's actually done a lot of things with crosswalks and more identifiable areas for the kids to cross. But if you're asking my opinion, I think, yeah, I think it'd be much better for the schools to offer that service.
I agree. Just the liability part, and it would be nice to know what they have budgeted or in excess for crossing guards. We have had several kids hit by cars.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk to the school districts. We'll set up a Zoom or a meeting with the school districts and request that from them. They have more reserves in their funds than we do, so let's ask them to put some money in there for that if they're willing to do it. Just want to bring that to the council attention. Go ahead, John.
Okay. Last page, 17. This is all the capital equipment items that were mentioned, well, not mentioned, but they're requesting equipment purchases of various types, but it will remain at 70,000 from last year. Vehicle modems, cameras, computers, as we purchase or new police vehicles, they do try to utilize the modems, cameras, and computers from other ones, but the technology oftentimes requires that these computers are only good for 2 or 3 years, and then technology changes, and we have to upgrade. So there's another 150, the budget was reduced from 184 to 150,000. Ballistic vests are still in the budget, dropped from 20 to 15. There was a number of vests bought last year, so the chief said there wouldn't be as many a need for this year as much as last year. The equipment leases goes up from 100,000 to 172,000. On the discussion of the chief, we need to purchase cars as well. We usually purchase vehicles. Very crazy. When we get the lease vehicles, we lease them. They're capital leases. We lease them over 3 years, and we own them after the end of the 3-year lease. So what I did is we have one lease still outstanding on the books that will come off the books this year, and then I added another 72,000 on the anticipation of the new lease for this year. So only reflecting the lease payments. So that will be brought up at that future date as far as police vehicles are concerned. So the budget for capital items is 374,000 versus which was increased now to $407,000. Total budget for the police department is overall down from the prior year. Last year's budget was $10,336,000. This year is $9,949,000. And the reflection of the $200,000 is the money that we get in our special service area. We allocate 2/3 to the police and 1/3 for the fire based on how much real estate taxes the special service area collects. So that's the reason that's reflected in here. Later on, you will see in the budget the special service area, so you'll understand the correlation between the two. Any other questions related to the police department? Thank you. Moving on
Thank you, Chief.
to the ESDA. 71. Yes, page 21. Everyone there? All right, as the mayor already indicated, he did leave a small amount, $10,000 for a director of ESDA, but there's also the comment on the operations supervisor. Emergency Service Patrol, that remained the same at a budget of $45,000. The balance of the line items, for all intents and purposes, are the same, except for the strategic and disaster planning. That is a new line item that was brought up for other services and charges. That has, obviously, the name speaks for itself. We have to keep up with we have to maintain our strategic and disaster planning. So this is for outside consultants.
John, quick question regarding the director position. That position will not be filled? Am I to understand that, or
Haven't decided all.
are you still undecided? Okay.
It's, I want to make sure the council is involved, but we have to find somebody of good character that's going to, carry the department forward. We want to make sure that whoever's at ESDA is going to help downstairs, or who's going to help at City Hall, and going to have functions that we can actually identify them doing functions. So until we get to that point, Alderman, I wanted to keep something in there, but I wanted to consult the council with, choosing someone. We've got many requests from retired personnel who want to be as a director, but we want to make sure we do this right. So I am going to present to the council 3 positions that we're going to have a meeting and interview for. I mentioned last night community economic developer. We're also going to look at personnel director. And I don't, at this point, we can add ESDA, but I don't think that's at the top of the list as opposed to community economic developer and having the HR personnel.
I think we should, just my opinion, we should fund the director position more than $10,000. There's a lot of responsibility that comes with being a director. I don't have a number, but I do know that there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that.
That number be maybe consistent more with 2018 and 2019.
That's
the previous
probably a
years
better
here.
suggestion.
So
Even if it's not field, I think it's, that if we do find somebody that's qualified to do that kind of work.
if we decide to fill that position at some point, even though the salary's at 10,000, we can, if it goes up to the level it was in 2019, just the line item will just increase, or increase it now.
Mayor, we can do it one of two ways. First of all, Alderman Smith, you're right. The salary of the last director that worked the full 12 months was $31,178. What I want to say here is we could fund it here, but even if we don't fund it enough, we also will be passing the salary ordinance. The salary ordinance, not the appropriation ordinance, dictates the salaries. So regardless of what we put in the line item, it's going to be in the salary ordinance that makes the final decision. So if we did underfund it, they would be paid accordingly. I mean, they'd be paid 1/12 of whatever, how many months they work. And so when we get to the salary ordinance, I can adjust it. I typically try to keep them the same, but it's not a requirement. So if you want to leave the 10,000 in for now, that's fine. But when the council looks at the salary ordinance, if the salary ordinance has for the ESDA director, which will be in the ordinance at $31,178, if you opt to leave it that way, then if you do find one, we know that's the salary they'll get, but it's obviously going to be prorated over the number of months they worked in the year.
Okay.
So whichever way you prefer, Alderman. No right or wrong here.
We can just do it through the salary ordinance, that's fine. Knowing that we,
So as long as the amounts are reflected in the budget, I'm fine with doing it in the salary ordinance.
Okay. If you look overall on the other page, last year's budget was $65,145. It's up to $90,350 as discussed. It really relates to the strategic and disaster planning, consultant for individuals that we may need to help with that. That's the $25,000 increase. A few other line items were reduced, but they're all very material. And as you can see, the budget of the ESDA typically stays at around the 60,000 range. So, no other questions? Okay. Fire department. We do have a fire chief here. Fire department on 70. That will start on page 19. Before I get into it again, as you'll see highlighted in red are the firefighters. Currently, we have 26 firefighters on the payroll. The budget was set at 33. It was at 30. It's up to 33. So budget is being set to allow for hiring 7 additional full-time firefighters. 3, well, 7. Can you hear? Put that on. All right. So going forward, there's no new line items in here. The personal services is at, last year budget was at $5,552,000.
Well, John, before you go to personal services, I'd like to recognize Chief Bacher. Chief, we made a couple changes, and the council has committed to not only more firefighters, but also in the budget, the council should be pointed to overtime. So we reduced the overtime to correlate with hiring more firefighters. And Chief, you want to talk about the plan for firefighters and
Absolutely. I mean, that's the number one thing. It's like the police department, it's about personnel. You know, you guys have been gracious to us in the past as far as our equipment goes. We got top of the line ambulances. In the near future, we will be looking for like a new ladder truck. But right now, it's all about personnel. You know, there's a reason that we work some guys working 48 hours, over 24 hours off, and coming back again. Some guys do another 48, and that takes a toll on them. If you look at our overall call volume, last year we were at 8,500 calls total. This year, to date, we're already 650 calls ahead of last year. And that's straight across the board. It's fire and EMS all together. So our guys are doing the job more as far as calls. It's not strictly EMS, it's along with fire calls as well. Everything is up for us. You know, one of our concerns, and we talked about the overtime, and you know, we did, you guys seen the numbers here, last year was 1.2, the year before that was 1.1. If we go back, well, we'll start just now, from May 1st until today, we're already at $250,000 in overtime, just in those 2.5 months. If you want to look at some figures as far as the change goes, we go back to 2019, we're at 624. That was kind of the start of the hiring freeze. The year before that, 2018, was 416 in overtime. And it just pretty much stays consistent after that between $400,000 and $300,000 in overtime. But one of the things that's concerning is not only is our call volume up, everybody knows that St. Mark's is closing. We've done our best, the mayor's done his best to try to delay that and all, but it looks like we're writing it down the wall. By doing that, we have to go to other hospitals. So, Ingalls obviously in Harvey, 2 hospitals in Munster, probably even part of that is where we're going to be transferring to. So just by doing that, our downtime at these hospitals is going to change. You know, right now, our guys does a great job. We got 2 ambulances at the hospital, another call pops up, they're leaving that hospital, they're going to that call. We're not going to be able to do that anymore when it comes time when we transport the Ingalls or to hospitals in Munster. So yes, you know, we did increase the firefighters for this budget year, but we're going to have to plan on in the near future to even add more than that. Right now, our minimum manning is 12. We're hoping to get that minimum manning up to 14. Because with the hospital closing, we're going to have more and more downtime with these ambulances. We're going to do 30 ambulance service.
Maybe we should, with that being said, and it's probably a conversation we might need to have in the future, under them circumstances where we have 2 ambulances in Munster, so to say, maybe think about contracting an ambulance service to stand in the gap just in case we ever get, maybe think about contracting like maybe Buds or Vandenberg or somebody that's local to stand in the gap just in case that happens. You know, what if we have maybe a disaster where we got multiple, you know, we need multiple ambulances, maybe, you know what I mean? I know we can call on our neighboring communities, but if they're not available, you know.
We already have that system already in place.
Right.
You are correct. You know, we look at our neighboring towns, because their call lines are up as well. It's just those areas we identify. So our number 1 and 2 mutual aid companies, depending on what part of town it is South Elm and Lansing. We also call Dalton mutual aid, and that's where we get Buds Ambulances. So there's no need to have a subcontractor, you know, come into our town. We're already here using it just for the mutual aid system. So it's nothing for us to contact either Dalton, Lansing, or South Elm to assist us, but you have to understand that their calling volume is up also. You know, more and more of these guys are taking gases just because they're running multiple calls as well.
So with that being said, you do not foresee a situation that arises that will not allow us to call on Dalton well, Dalton uses Buds, my understanding.
That's how we get a hold of Buds. So we notify Dalton.
Okay. Okay.
They in return notify Septones over
Right.
Cal City, and we get Buds.
Yeah, okay.
It's already in place.
Okay, all right.
In 2021, we budgeted for how many firefighters? You said 30? In 2021?
Yes, 30.
And this year, we budgeting for 33?
Right, there was already discussions to increase the number to 33, notwithstanding the fact that we're only at 26 right now.
And just, you know, enjoy some numbers that are out there. You know, right now, we have 44 line personnel total. Prior to the hiring freeze, we had 54 guys on the job. Now, minus the officers and such. But with that 44 personnel, we have 3 guys on duty injury, which, you know, that's always the unknown. We have 2 individuals that are on extended sick time. So in all reality, right now, we have 39 personnel that's working 13 a shift, and our minimum manning is 12 guys a day. So there's only 1 bonus, and 1 extra guy, 13 guys on each shift right now. So every day, we are operating anywhere from 3 to 5 overtime a day. Every day. And that's where we get that $250,000 in 2.5 months. So you have the police out there, and the police department, I'm not going to jump here, but in the near future, we're gonna have to go above and beyond where we were before personnel. Just because the writing's on the wall. Ingalls Hospital, call volume's up, and that's not changing.
And Chief, can you mention the, going after a grant, and that grant is gonna cover some of the salary as well?
So right now, we currently are working off of a grant for personnel. We're in the second year of that. The grant was 65% paid by the government, and the city was responsible for that 35%. We're in the second year of that. Next year, that reverses. So the first year was 65-35, second year 65-35, next year is going to be 35% city responsibility, 65% of the government. So we did apply for another one, and that's 100% across the board. We have not heard from them yet. Because we just got another grant, it's probably going to be a hard sell to get it. So we wish that we had the information at St. Margaret's prior to writing that grant, because that's going to be a big bonus to us getting future grants. We think.
And, you know, just to put it in perspective, we have almost 4,500 Calumet City residents, correct, Chief, that get transported to St. Margaret? Is it between 3,500 and 4,500?
No, it was actually 3,200 last year.
Okay.
With the neighboring towns, that brought the number up to 4,500. We were the #1 supplier of patients to St. Margaret's Hospital. 3,200 for us. Hammond was at 2,200. Bud's Ambulance was at 1,200. And then Lansing and Southtown were both about 350 and 450 each. So all those patients that 4,500 are referring to, they have to find a new home. And that's going to be, again, to delay all ambulances in the area where they're going to farther hospitals, downtown will be farther. So that's why, we obviously do not want to lower our standard of care that we currently are doing, the residents of Calumet City. And that's why in the near future, we're going to be looking at putting 30 ambulance in service. And mind you, we do have one now, but we lose the pipeline from the engine and the ladder truck, because they sent their ambulance out. What we're looking at doing is, in the near future, is, again, with St. Margaret's situation, is actually getting the third ambulance permanently established. But by doing that, we're going to have to.
Yeah. And at some point, I'm going to ask the council to help get involved with St. Margaret's. We're looking at several options, which we'll discuss in executive session. But part of it is that St. Margaret's is scheduled to close and wind down on August 1st. So if it's serious, I mean, St. Margaret's doesn't want to change its position. The Mayor of Hammond, myself, we're going to need support from the council to get them to change their position. I've talked to Senator Durbin, I've talked to Congresswoman Kelly. Unfortunately, the senator on the Indiana side is supportive of the closing. So we want to make sure, and the congressman on the other side in Indiana is supportive of the closing. So we want to get all of them in the room and try to figure this out. So we're going to involve the council, because that's a huge number for our city, our town. So we have to come up with alternatives quickly.
And just real quick, just to give you an update. So St. Margaret's, I'm sure when you read it in the paper, they stated that they are still going to have an emergency with an operation. But for all the Illinois departments, IEPH, they have set rules for Illinois ambulances to be transported to the emergency room. And right now, that does not fit the criteria. So we're working with St. Margaret's. It's the best kept secret over there. Last week I reached out to the EMS coordinator. He was still up in the air as far as what their exact findings were going to be, the final outcome. We're working with the doctors over there. Our doc is from Ingalls Hospital, which is in charge of all the paramedics. He's been reaching out to St. Margaret's as well, and we're not getting answers right now. At the bare minimum, we would like to take our basic life support patients over there. That's just something like a minor injury or something called those risks, and we know that they're going to go there, put a cast on, and be shipped out that day. But as far as our ALS patients go, cardiac patients, difficulty breathing, drug overdoses, all those, we would not be able to transport them. More to come.
No.
He's reaching out to all his contacts as far as what they can do. At the end of the day, for us, for St. Margaret's, it's the same footprint they get out of St. James, and they go to the hospital at St. James right now, so that's a lot.
Any questions? The alderman have any questions for the chief? Go ahead, John.
Chief, you mentioned a new fire engine. What's the cost associated with that?
So, back in 2018, you guys purchased two engines for us, and that was about $1 million. So
ahead, John.
All right. Then moving on from salaries, we got other services and charges. Last year, the budget was $78,975. This year, $98,050. One of the items, again, is building maintenance is up $5,000. Also, foreign fire insurance is up $40,000. Let me explain the foreign fire insurance again. Foreign fire insurance is paid by the insurance carriers to the city of Calumet City. However, by law, that money then is given to the fire department to be used within their own department. So we're basically an intermediary of holding the money, and then they spend it accordingly. But what we have to do, because the money does come into us, we then have to reflect the expenditure going out, and we, in talking to the chief, he anticipates that cost, the money coming in is going to be higher, so all this is a push. Whatever we get in goes out to the fire department, so it's not that we're raising it to raise it, there's more revenue coming in, that's why the line item was raised. Beyond that, all the other line items are rather immaterial as far as costs are concerned. Are there any questions related to the services and charges? Okay, supplies are going up from 43,000 to 52,000. The number one increase, as you'll notice, in fact, the bulk of that line item is all wearing apparel. We are obligated to obviously provide the firefighting equipment to all of our firefighters. That's not shared equipment, that's individual equipment with the addition of officers that are being allocated in the budget. The cost is also going up related to the new firefighters being hired. Any questions related to supplies? Moving on to the last page, vehicle expense. The fire chief said that the ambulance paramedic fund will now cover all vehicle expenses, so that's why we have eliminated the budget. And as far as major improvements, the fire department, the ambulance paramedic fund, when we go over that budget, will be utilized to pick up any costs related to the fire stations. So there are no costs associated with vehicle expense or capital items. So the fire department overall budget was at $5.6 million last year, $5,678,000. This year, $5,801,000. You can see the large amount that was expended, and the main reason it was because of overtime. And while we're on it, at one point, when the chief, I don't think you mentioned it, but if you go back when that overtime was in the 400,000 range, the city had actually had 18 men, what was that? We had 54 firefighters and command staff. Even with the budget we're proposing here, it's 51. So there were actually in the past 3 more firefighters, and that may be something, obviously, as you're talking about, maybe the ambulance issues we would have to go up to. But 3 more officers might also reduce that overtime down substantially where they may pay for themselves. But we'll get through the 7 we need right now and then move forward. And by the way, this is the public safety. Total taxes levied into public safety are $300,000. And then, as I indicated, 2/3 to the police, 1/3 to the fire. Any questions related to the fire department's budget? Okay. Give me 1 second. All right, the ambulance paramedic fund. It's kind of more into the end of this work. Page 33. And again, our fire chief is here to be able to answer any of these questions. Right off we'll start off with the revenues. And looks like the very first line item is a brand new line item. It is related to Medicaid being paid directly to us. We can bill the Medicaid. Is that correct, the fire chief?
Yeah, so in the past, there was, we did get some funds through Medicare and Medicaid solutions, but it's a very low number compared to what we were generating. Since then, the government came out with a program where, of course, they get their cut, they get, I think it's 1% they get, and we get 49% of additional fees for Medicare and Medicaid
state and federal government gets, I think, like 65%. Villages get like 35%. It's, I mean, it's an added.
Also, on the ambulance fees, you will notice, and I think this correlates to what the chief is saying about, the fire chief, that is, since we have two chiefs there. The fire chief is talking about the increase in calls. You can see that last year, we collected $1,325,000 related to the, and we just split it between ambulance apparatus. Overall, $1.3 million was collected. If you go back, you can see it was 1.2, $1,180,000, and then $1 million. So you can see how the fees have gone up because of the number of calls. Other than that, there are two other new line items being added to the budget. There is a FEMA, through FEMA, there is an SEBA grant, $324,000. There is also a match on top of the city for $36,000, which you'll see on the next page. But this is a grant that's already been approved for the city of Calumet City. Again, Chief, do you want to just tell them exactly what that equipment is?
Are you talking the SCBA?
Yeah, the SCBA. Oh, I thought, well, what is the equipment for?
So, I mean, the SCBA.
I mean, what is the equipment?
The SCBA is the airbags that we wear on our back. Basically, you know, they have shelf, because our bottles are only good for 15 years. And obviously, just like computer equipment, the cars that you drive, the airbag also change every year as far as improvements go. So we tried to get an SCBA grant in the past, and we did not get it. We didn't meet that criteria yet. We're there now, so we're pretty hopeful. We work with our vendors as far as getting this grant out there, and as far as they want to know what kind of airbag we're currently using. So we feel pretty confident with it. That's why we had to have it listed in the budget. We have not gotten it yet.
Thank you, Chief. The other item is the training center revenue. And again, this is something new that the fire department is looking at starting, where other departments can come in and utilize our training facility, and therefore we would charge fees. If you want it expounded further, then I'll defer that again to the fire chief.
Yeah, so in the Central Police Department, there's outside agencies that are interested in teaching classes in the area. Right now, obviously, through FSI, that's where we sent our guys to the fire academy at, and they work hand in hand with Orland Fire Protection District. Orland got so busy with all the classes that they offered, they needed another location. That's what we did. So right now, Orland is through FSI, is using our facility to teach classes. For instance, the end of this month, we're teaching FSI, this is Fire Service Institute, is teaching a hazmat class for the Illinois State Police, but they're going to use our facility, so we get paid for them to use our facility. And you guys, I'm sure you can have some numerous times when we're putting that training tower up right now. Those pods were all donated by Police by Liz. We have to actually get a couple more extra ones, but later on, you'll see in the budget, we added more money to that, because now it's not going to cut doors and windows in the training tower. Once it happens, you'll see more and more classes using our facilities. We'll have a training tower on site.
Again, thank you, Chief. Overall, the revenues this year, or our last year, were budgeted at $1,329,000. This year, we're looking at $2,450,000. Going on to the expenditures for the ambulances, last year's budget was $506,000. This year's $574,000. Part of the increase, or the biggest part of the increase, is related to the Orland Fire Protection District, which we utilize for our 911 fire calls. Call volume goes up. As call volume goes up, so does our cost. Therefore, we're looking at increasing it from $320,000 to $360,000. And then there are other communication equipments that the fire department uses that they anticipate buying more of this year. Last year, the budget was 40, spent 61, but they anticipate spending another $60,000 again this year. So other services on charges, as you see, are at $506,000 last year, $574. Does anybody have any questions?
I had one, John. Question. Chief, I know we talked about this in the past, and I could be way off, but for the Orland Park, for the dispatch and our call volumes going up, does it make sense if we promoted like, I don't know, a non-emergency number? I mean, because every call that comes in from residents, is there a certain call volume that maybe have to necessarily go through that dispatch, or does that help at all, or am I just?
We actually do that, and obviously if someone calls 911, it has to go through the dispatch center. But one of the things that we started, this was a few years ago, we have a citizen assist program, and these are the ones that call us on a regular basis if they need help going to getting out of the house, get to the car, go to the doctor's office, and vice versa. When we have those individuals that call us on a regular basis, what we do, we have them call the station direct. And that way, we're not getting charged for it. So,
Gotcha.
911 calls, that's hard to do, as far as like deciphering what's emergency, what's not. But again, if we have patients that call us on a regular basis, we'll call the station.
Gotcha.
We did
Okay.
change that this year a little bit just because of COVID, when that was going on. We went and adopted patients from every company we went to, so we would call the station when they were serving, we would call dispatch to say, and someone called them out for assistance, just so that they're aware they documented they were calling out. Just so that,
Okay. Thank you.
And just, and Mike, just real quick about Orland as well. They dispatch for other agencies as well. We don't pay for any of the upgrades for equipment and all that. We don't, all that's paid through for Orland Fire Protection District. What we get charged for is the dispatchers themselves. So they have like 6 departments that they dispatch for. They take the total call line between all 6 departments and they divide it up. So we're averaging about $40 a call. That doesn't matter if it's Cal City, they phone out for Cushman Hills as well, we're getting paid the same at $40 a call.
Okay, moving on. Vehicle expense, ambulance, budget remained the same, 45,000 last year, 45,000 this year, and again, it's just, you don't always know how often the tires are typically one of the big expenses here, tires and the maintenance of the vehicles. Now, so there's no increase there, does anybody have any questions? Hearing none, I will move to the ambulance capital projects. As you can see, the equipment purchase is $350,000. It's increased from $60,000 to $350,000. Part of that is to reflect the cost of the leases that we're paying. I believe the chief, you said that was like $200,000, correct?
Yeah, it's actually a new ambulance. So we have a new ambulance scheduled for October of this year. That's $294,000 that you guys approved in the past. So $294,969 is coming out of that. Normally, in the past, and we'll hopefully do the same again, but we were able to take cash for that. So that's why that number went up to $350, but again, $294,000 that's the new ambulance coming out.
Thank you, chief, I forgot that. All right. As far as the other expenditures are concerned, we have the Zoll monitors, capital purchases, Stryker Power, another $48,500. There are no citywide radio upgrades in the budget this year. Total ambulance capital purchases are increasing from $153,000 to $448,000. The main increase due to the paying cash in full for a brand-new ambulance. So the total ambulance budget, $726,000 last year, $1,107,000 this year. Moving on to the apparatus. Apparatus meaning the trucks, not the ambulances. Training, the budget was increased from $50,000 to $80,000. Part of that also, Chief, correct me, is also because of the new officers that we hope to get in, correct? Or is this on District 2?
For fire, so the number increases. So basically, when we send an individual out to the camp, it's $4,100 for itself, and then with hotel, we stay on 2% of the lease, hotel and rental expense, it's basically $9,000 a camp.
Okay. Vehicle maintenance on the apparatus, budget $62,000. Last year, this year, $85,000. The increase again is on the maintenance of the vehicles, and as you can see, the number has been pretty consistent, sitting in the $60,000 range in years past. So the budget was raised from $40,000 to $60,000. That was Any other questions, or does anybody have any questions related to vehicle maintenance expense? The final line item here is the capital items for the apparatus, the equipment purchases, the Station 1 building upgrades, Station 2 upgrades, the equipment lease. So yes, that's the one we were talking about with the fire trucks. That's budgeted in this year for $214,653. Miscellaneous equipment upgrades of $10,000. The training center, which I could let the chief go into because he was starting to talk about the training center, why it's going from 90 to 250,000. Chief, the pods.
Yeah, that has to do with the training tower itself. There's a company, Southburg Well, they're the ones that come out there and actually cut the holes in the pods themselves. We have windows in there, access doors in there, outside staircases, and right now we got an estimate from him. We all over $196,000. So we got to get to that 200,000 range, or 250,000 range for the, and that's something, it's not just the fire, that's something we use also for the trainings, once that tower is going, the training towers.
And then the last item, we talked about the SEBA grant that we might be getting, or at least we applied for, the grant being $324,000. There's a match of $36,000, so if we do get it, the cost would be $360,000, so we're reflecting that cost here. Overall, the total expenses for the apparatus fund are going up from last year's budget of $705,000 to $1,134,000. If you look at the total fund revenues and expenditures, we are anticipating over $2.4 million of estimated revenue. The expenditures are being budgeted at $2,242,000. So there is on paper, a surplus of $207,000, but a lot of that has to deal with, we don't know how much of that Medicare money we'll get this year. We're estimating $800,000. It may not be that high. So that is if anybody has any other questions or overall questions related to the ambulance medic fund. And guess what?
Any other questions? If not, there being no further business to come before the Committee of the Whole, Finance Committee of the Whole, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn at 7:17 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Alderman Williams, second by Alderman Gardner. Alderman Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.